Hello and welcome to Blog Tornado. How are you? And today we're gonna go quickly over Bob Lazar's story again and try to understand what really happened with this element 115 that's so popular within this UFO community around the world because, as you already know, these UFOs are running on element 115. But something comes up again here at Blog Tornado, which is a cause for suspicion to cover things up, and I will get into this right away. So stay with me a little bit longer to understand this whole mystery behind element 115 and the mystery behind the Zeta Reticuli, okay? And where they could be now. And we're starting right now. So now this whole situation is really about if there was extraterrestrial or not. So like I said again, there have to be some of the extraterrestrial there, if anything. And him saying that they left is what I want to talk about today, which I think he covered up. So please stay with me a little bit longer to understand the Zeta Reticuli mystery, which to my opinion, they're probably still here on Earth. And him specifically saying on his website that they left is what caught my attention. And one of the things that he said on Art Bell's show, he said there are a few things or some things or whatever that he doesn't want to talk about, and for a good reason it's gonna stay that way. And him saying that pretty much tells me everything about what's going on behind the closed doors. It's all about the Zeta Reticuli here. And again, him saying on his website they left is that much for cause for suspicion. Now, as you already know, I put element 115 as the key topic in today's video. So this is the whole idea here. Please stay with me. It is rather strange because Bob Lazar himself said that this element 115 cannot be reproduced here on Earth, okay? Only on some solar system, on some planet or whatever that is naturally occurring, okay? And suddenly, out of nowhere, we have this information that came out in 2003 about this element 115 called Moscovian. It was synthesized in the lab by Russian and US scientists. And that is just very strange to me right there, because could it be that they say that on purpose to blur the lines, again to hide the existence of Zeta Reticuli here on Earth by saying that this element was synthesized in the lab, which supposedly is now a new element on periodic table. So again, that is the cause for suspicion, because really those UFOs were running on element 115, as you already know. So now suddenly this element is coming out of nowhere. But if we look at it from a different angle, please stay with me a little bit longer. Did the scientists, Russians and American scientists, get together to try to create this element 115 in the lab? For what reason? Well, if Zeta Reticuli have landed on our planet, it could have been that perhaps they ran out of fuel. And once they got in the way the first time when they came down in 1961, when Barney and Betty Hill encountered them, they stopped them in the middle of the highway, as you already know. Could have been that perhaps they were interested in the car and find out what it runs on. And once they find out it runs on fuel, they for sure knew they were doomed, because that's not what they needed for their own fuel, as far as their UFOs are concerned. So they must have stayed somewhere, which again, they ended up in S4 for a reason. they were quick to find out that perhaps this is where they could have stayed, because you already know that Bob Lazar was saying that they stay there to do some research for exchange for fuel and materials and training to the S4 personnel. So now, what were they doing there really? What research, So probably they needed to create element 115, but perhaps we don't have the materials to put it together. So this research with Russians and American scientists that took place to create this, to synthesize this element in the lab, was rather necessary. Maybe because to simply they needed this element to take off, and perhaps that's why this mission to create element 115 deal was created, simply because they needed this fuel to get back where they probably came from, which was Zeta Reticuli solar system. So it's either that, or it was purposely put there, implanted there to kind of hide the truth about extraterrestrials here on Earth, the Zeta Reticuli, to make us think that the element 115 was created and Zeta Reticuli left the planet. But perhaps there is no such thing as element 115, because Bob Lazar clearly talks about this. This element 115 cannot be reproduced here on Earth. And now, if they didn't put out a story like that about Moscovian 115 element, then people will think this extraterrestrial are still here on Earth, which is the whole ball game here, to kind of redirect the public away from these extraterrestrials, which could even be in power right now as far as we go, as far as our humanity goes. We don't know the IQ of these extraterrestrials, but if it's 3 times more or whatever, you can understand how fast they could possibly get into a power. And it's been a while, right? This happened so many years ago already. So 60 years ago, perhaps. So now, this whole mysterious thing about Zeta Reticuli is really the key topic today, and where are they now is the question, and those 9 UFOs. Like I said, could they be in power already? And was there such a thing as element 115, even though there's documentaries on it and etc. But if we cannot synthesize, produce this kind of element here on Earth at mass quantities, then which Bob Lazar talks about, then we're gonna have a problem. They're gonna have a problem of getting back to their solar system. So they're probably still here on Earth, and they never left, basically because they don't have the fuel. Okay, and that's what could have happened. And Bob Lazar saying that they left because there was some sort of explosion and they didn't get along, and 40 people died and a bunch of scientists, is probably something that was orchestrated, because again, to point the public away from S4. As you already know, they pack up their bags. There's nothing there at Popos Lake now. It's simply a dry place. No evidence that there was something there to begin with. They covered it up so well, as a matter of fact. So that is a cause for suspicion. Why people do certain things, such measures like that, is a question. Did they just simply disappear? And then I think Bob Lazar was probably the cause behind this disappearance of S4, because again, he let this information into the public to protect himself. And even S4 should understand that, because you can't just trust somebody to hand you over such information and don't expect that there's going to be some sort of reaction for this action, right? So this is the whole ball game here, and the suspicion about these extraterrestrials from Zeta Reticuli being here on Earth is just growing more and more, that they never left the planet, okay? And that is a serious thing to think about. So it's exactly what S4 doesn't want Bob Lazar to tell to the public about, which he might one day, as a matter of fact, when he thinks that this whole thing, or it's time to do it, because it could be that just he can't hold it in any longer, okay? It's difficult to hold the truth from the public. As you already know, there's a big pressure on him about people wanting to know where those, or in general, where those extraterrestrials are, or those 9 UFOs are right now. So this pressure might push him to tell us the truth, which again he talked about on Art Bell's show, right? He said there's some things he's not going to tell to the public, and it's going to stay that way. So now you know why, that there is some extra information here that he's hiding from us. And like I told you, I think that extraterrestrials from Zeta Reticuli simply never left the planet because of this element 115 deal. The reason is because, as you already know, those 9 UFOs were running on this element 115 with this antimatter reactor in them, which had a particle accelerator that mixes protons together with element 115 and produces and mutates into element 116. Okay. Now, if we cannot make such element, such fuel that contains antimatter on top of that, as you already know, where are we going to get antimatter to begin with? So this is the whole mystery behind it. Now, simply extraterrestrials have no way of returning back because there is no fuel. And this is what's mind-boggling here, that kind of makes you wonder about what he said on his website about Zeta Reticuli leaving the planet. How could they leave if they didn't have the fuel? Again, antimatter was involved here, and where are you going to collect antimatter here on Earth is the question. Maybe they should have made up a story about antimatter so we don't get suspicious. So we know that antimatter can be obtained here on Earth, and then they could have used it in the UFO. But where are we going to get antimatter from? So that is the whole ball game that's going on here, that's blurring the lines between truth and lies here. So, and that's pretty much what I want to talk about today with Bob Lazar, but it's definitely this element 115 deal that is preventing them from going anywhere. So, you know, that tells us that perhaps they're still here on Earth. And as a matter of fact, during the raid of Area 51, Bob Lazar said, don't go after Area 51, you know, this happened on S4. Of course, he's going to point people at S4, which simply disappeared off the face of the Earth. So people don't go looking after those aliens. And that's what he wants you to think, because he's protecting those extraterrestrials, okay? Because, you know, they don't want to be discovered. Then it could attract a lot of powerful people that want some of this extraterrestrial presence in person. And, you know, a lot of countries would be interested in this, but it's really, he plays a very important role here because of this, because he was in the midst of this, and he was the one who actually released this into the public. And now he's this bridge between the outside world and these extraterrestrials and the government. And it's really up to him what he says, what he doesn't. But they don't want to pop him just yet, because simply people would get suspicious. And like he said on his website, if you go there and check it out, he said, you know, if they did something to him, that would just prove that his story is authentic. That yes, that there was something there at S4 they don't want us to know. And again, this whole ball game is about him staying alive, because simply they could stage a suicide because of this pressure from the public, calling him a liar, pathological liar, etc., and simply stage it as a suicide, and that would pretty much cover up the tracks. Again, you have to do it in a certain way, so people cannot, grab the truth. And staging a suicide, that he committed a suicide, or might kind of sound reasonable. So again, like I said, because of the pressure from people and so forth. So that's why whenever you see Bob Lazar talking about this on interviews, he's really relaxed about it and looks like he's okay with everything that happened, just so he can back himself up in case something happens to him, so people don't assume that he was distressed and he committed suicide because of this pressure from people, from the public. As you already know, a lot of people think he's a pathological liar, but was that purposely said to blur the truth even more, so people don't assume that this extraterrestrial are still here on Earth? Was that the whole spiel here? Alright, so anyways, that's pretty much about the Zeta Reticuli lines today, and if something comes up, I will talk about it next time, okay? So come back to see what's going on. I'm also a witness of UFO orb phenomena. If you want to check it out at blogtrainer.com, in UFO section, there's a UFO orb article I wrote, a simple article about what happened to me with this UFO orb phenomenon. And you're going to have to scroll all the way to the bottom to see this article, because it was one of the first ones that I put out, and it's the reason why this channel exists, okay? So anyways, thank you very much. If you'd like, you can give it a thumbs up or subscribe here at the bottom right. That would be much appreciated. Thank you. And please come back to see what's going on, and I will talk to you next time. And please keep your eyes in the sky in case you see a UFO. You never know. Fly by. Cheers.